In this tutorial, we're going to be looking at how to engage your core so you can stabilise your spine. Now, what we're going to do first is quickly look at some anatomy on the whiteboard. So we'll get stuck into that. And then we're going to go into the gym and look a little bit more at the practical application of what I'm going to talk about on the whiteboard here. But before we get into that, if you just quickly look down in the below this video in the description, you will see two links. One is for how to overcome lower back pain, the online course, and then the second one is how to overcome lower back pain, the online course plus coaching. So that is essentially the method that I use, the consultation and the assessment that I use to find out about people's and understand their lower back pain. Then, with regards to the coaching, I will then help and support you through reducing the pain and then rebuilding the core as well. If you go through the online option, it's then you go through the consultation assessment yourself and you start building the strategy for yourself as well. So if you want to find out a little bit more about those, just click one of the links in the description or both of them, click both the links, find out a little bit more, get yourself enrolled, and then we can start helping you overcome your lower back pain. In part number one, we're going to look at some quick anatomy, which will help you understand what strategy to use to be able to to engage your core, so it stabilises your spine. So what we've got with regards to engaging the core, excuse my sort of crude, poor images, but that we're just going to say is the pelvis. So that's the front of the pelvis. What we've then got is a spine that comes straight up from it. So these are just the bony structures. Now, obviously, we have muscles on here which hold all of this up. So we have muscles, we have ligaments, we have tendons, and we have fascia that's holding all of this up. Now, again, this isn't going to be an exact drawing, but again, it's just to get across the basic principle of what I'm talking about. So if we just say this is a front-on view. So what we will have are what is essentially, as you may be able to see here, are essentially guy wires that are coming off the pelvis. So I'm just saying that there are some coming off the side. But what I can also do is say there are some coming off the front. And if I was to turn that, there would be some coming off the back. So we've got all these guy wires which are helping stabilise the pelvis and help keep this spine upright where we want it to be. Now, if we've got imbalance from one side to the other, it's going to create imbalances through the core. So what we need to be able to do is optimize every single one of these guy wires and get them working as best together as we can. Because if we've just got, say, this player and this player in the game, then the spine isn't going to be as stable as if we've got many or all of these players in the game. Now, depending on the position or the movement that we're doing, certain are going to be more dominant over others, but we want them all working and working together. So that is part number one. So that's just a very sort of crude outline of the way the spine becomes stabilised, in the fact that there are guy wires and they all need to work optimally together to be able to maintain the position that you want. Now, the other part to this is if we take a bird's eye view of, if I was to chop someone off, across the stomach and look down, what we would see is obviously the spine would be here, and then there would be layers all the way around. So essentially we've got three layers. Now, again, as I've mentioned, we've got all of these different guy wires, so these many different muscles and tissues and fascia that are holding our spine stable. We need all those to work together. Now, what we don't want, again, is we don't just want this inner ring of muscles working. So this might be TVA, transverse abdominis. Then we start looking at internal obliques, and then it might be, let's just say, external obliques and rectus abdominis. So we've got these three different layers that are going to be working. So again, as I've mentioned, we want all of these players. Now this could include lats, traps, quadratus lumborum, rectus abdominis, transverse abdominis, internal obliques, external obliques, multifidus, iliocost, all of these different muscles that are around the spine. And then we've got the layers. So we want all the deep layers and we want all of the superficial layers working. So what we don't want, as I've mentioned, is just a couple of players stabilising the spine, or just the inner unit stabilising the spine. We want all of these and all of these, because what's going to happen is they're going to be optimised, and that's going to evenly spread load across them all, rather than just across a few. Because if we spread 100% across a few, there's going to be more stress than if we spread 100% across many, if that makes sense. So we want all muscles or all tissues and all the layers working at the same time. So what we'll do now is we'll have a look and put that into practice. So what does all that we've just talked about, what does that mean in the practical application of it in a gym environment, or in a class environment, or in just an everyday environment, lifting shopping bags, lifting children, carrying things, pushing doors open, pulling them open? Well, there are essentially two ways that people might describe to stabilise the spine. One is hollowing, one is bracing. Now, for me, from everything that I've read, from everything that I understand about the anatomy, bracing is the more appropriate way of stabilising the spine, because it does exactly what we've talked about on the whiteboard there. It gets more players in the game to be able to stabilise the spine. When we talk about hollowing, they're just talking about inner layers, deeper layers, which is fine, but it's not managing the load as effectively as it could. So when we're talking about hollowing, what are we talking about? Well, hollowing, if you've never heard of it before, is where you draw your navel towards your spine. So you essentially suck your navel in, so you create a sort of hollow position here, and that's what hollowing is. Now, hollowing is said to activate transverse abdominis and also potentially the pelvic floor. Now, this may be okay for light activities, but light activities don't necessarily stabilise the spine. As we move up into heavier activities, we then move into bracing. Now, the reason I say bracing is because we can lightly brace and we can heavily brace. So what we are doing is, even in light activities, we're trying to optimise the load around the spine. So what we're trying to do is not only engage rectus abdominis and the obliques. So again, all we would do is you would take a couple of fingers, and you could just do it now, and you can just push them, find your pelvis like that, and just push them into your stomach, so into the fleshy part of your stomach, so they suck in. And then bracing is where you tense your abs and your obliques, and that will push your fingers back out. That is bracing. That's activating transverse abdominis, internal obliques, external obliques, and rectus abdominis. So just in that abdominal wall area, we're getting more players in the game. Now, if we were going heavier, what we would do is we would not only brace the abdominals, but we would then draw the shoulders back, starting to get involved now with the rhomboids and trapezius. So we're now getting a little bit extra involved, a little bit higher up the spine to hold that posture. The final thing that we can then do is push the shoulders down. And then what we're doing here is engaging the lats. So the lats now that come down the side of the spine. So we're going, bracing the abdominals, shoulders back and down. Now we're ready to do a heavier lift. Obviously, if it's just a light object, we would just do that in a light way. So we wouldn't necessarily be rigid. We could be a little bit looser, a little bit lighter, but it might just be and then lift. But we're doing all the same things. We're engaging the abdominals, we're pulling the shoulders back, and we're pulling the shoulders down. And that is how you're going to engage your core to stabilise your spine. If you then wanted to take it a step further, you could then engage glutes as well, depending on the activity that you were doing. And I could go back onto there, talk about thoracolumbar fascia, the glutes and the lats, and how they interact and how that balances and spreads load even more. But for now, it's just about learning to brace, to get as many players in the game as possible, to be able to stabilise the spine, obviously to help you not only overcome lower back pain, but also build core strength and stability and just a healthier spine in general. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from Christopher Holt Training. I look forward to speaking with you in the next tutorial.